know that the province of British Columbia had released our open government platform last week. I have to tell you, I was having a few anxious moments because I got some screen captures of the work that we were doing, but I was told I wasn't allowed to use them until the site was actually released, and so I was sweating a little bit before I left last week, but thankfully it did get released. Otherwise I was going to have to tap dance or something up here for the last part of my presentation. So starting with empowering citizens to create value from open data, we have released our DataBC site, and my colleagues who worked on this site were able to learn from the work that's been done in Australia and New Zealand in terms of your open data sites. And really the focus of the open data site is to empower users to make better decisions that help people save time and money and help solve problems that matter in communities. So the data that's available on this site in terms of the initial launch is data that was available in some form or another across multiple government websites. This brings it all together so that it's more easily accessible, as well as in a machine-readable format so that people can take the data and reuse it and create new value out of it. The other thing that's very interesting is that there's a lot of data that's now available on this site that even people within government didn't have access to before. So this data is now available openly to citizens and businesses and academics across the world, as well as people that work within the BC Public Service. My Deputy Minister, Kim Henderson, was doing a presentation on our new open government platform at the Federal Provincial Territorial Deputies meeting in Toronto earlier this year. And her colleagues were very interested in the business case that she used to support the launch of the open data site. And I think it was really compelling in terms of her response that there was no business case. This is really about engaging with citizens in a different way. And if we expect citizens to engage with us in a meaningful way, we really need to ensure that our citizens and the businesses that we work with have the same information that we do so that we're starting on a level playing field. So the DataBC site is the first provincial open data site in Canada and has the largest number of data sets available in any data site open data site in Canada. This gives you an idea of the number of data sets that are available by sector. And so people can look at demographic information to education outcomes, fish habitat, and death rates as a sampling of all of the different sectors. I think what's even more important is the direction that we received from our Premier when the site was launched, in that this is a good start, and this is information that was available, but the intention is that all government data should be made open and available within the context of ensuring that we protect private information, personal information, but that when we're collecting data, when we're building those systems, the intent should be that those systems should be open and available. We also, along with the open data site, have another open information site. And again, that's going to meeting the demands in terms of more open information about government. So one of the first things that you'll see on that site is ministers and deputy ministers' travel expenses. Those were one of the things that were regularly requested under our Freedom of Information legislation. So that is now available on the open information site. The other change there as well is when someone does file a Freedom of Information request, within 72 hours, that information will be published on the open information site. Another key piece of our open government platform was looking at our government website. So people come to the Government of British Columbia website to find information, to find services. And we know that citizens increasingly want to be able to do more of their interactions with government online. But when the folks that were looking at the design of the website, when they looked at the expectations that people had in terms of being able to access services online and their actual experience, there was a fairly significant gap in terms of their expectations and their actual experience. So there was a significant amount of citizen consultation that was done around the website. There was a lot of user testing that was done. Staff came into our offices to just learn how people actually asked about government services so that we could ensure that we were delivering what they were looking for on our new site. An interesting example, in British Columbia, the government implemented a new tax policy very shortly after being elected, and they hadn't mentioned that they were going to do this during the election. So it created a significant amount of what was, earlier this morning somebody was talking about anger and how anger about an issue really tends to engage people. Well, people were very angry about this. So one of the things that folks did when they were doing user testing was asking the users to actually find information about the harmonized sales tax on the government website. And over 2/3 of the people who were doing the user testing could not find any information about the HST. Now, this wasn't the screen that was actually available at the time, but on the right-hand side of the screen at that point in time was a flashing red button that said HST, and people still didn't see that as a place to go and get that information. And what was really interesting is when we asked them why, they have been trained on private sites that that's where all the advertising is. So people ignore that right-hand side of the screen. And so our Public Affairs Bureau had this great thing going, but nobody actually looked at it to find the services that they were looking for. We also found out that when people came to the site, there were two primary things that they were looking for. They were looking for government services, and they were looking for jobs. And again, both of those things they found very difficult to do in this version of the website. So you could say that we embarked on kind of a co-design of the new government website, and very pleased to let you know that this is our new beautiful Government of British Columbia site. And what it has done, it has moved from a communications site where the Public Affairs Bureau was pushing information out to citizens and has become a much more citizen-centric site. You'll see that on the bottom left-hand box there is a very large place that talks about the services that people are looking for in government. So it's a listing by services, it's a listing by life events. You can go in there and look at all of the forms that government has. And for those people who understand the structure of ministries, they can also look at that as well. We still have a place for our Premier because it's important that people can engage with the Premier and understand what's going on in terms of government priorities. That carousel in the middle does kind of slide along, and that was the government communications folks still identify what those priorities are. And then the top banner has changing scenes of British Columbia, because one of the things that we do know is that people are very proud of their province, and they like to see that physical interpretation. The next area in terms of encouraging collaboration to deliver quality services to citizens, the example that I wanted to bring to your attention was a review of BC's Water Act. It was over 100 years old, and there was a desire to do something different in terms of looking at the way that the change in the legislation was going to take place. So folks from the Citizen Engagement Office, as well as our Ministry of Environment, held 12 face-to-face sessions around British Columbia that attracted over 500 people. There were nearly 27,000 unique visits to our website and the blog, and it resulted in nearly 2,000 submissions via the blog, fax, email, and mail. And it was a discussion about what the Water Act could be, and asking people to put forward proposals in terms of changes that could occur. So all of this information has been taken into account. They're in the process of redrafting that legislation, which we put back out for public comment when it's available. And my colleague David Hughes is recognized as one of the sort of international gurus in the citizen engagement area. And his comment about this is that the magic happens when you connect policy development to people's passion, and that close contact creates empathy between government and the public through shared experience and understanding. And what this does is create a new policy, a new legislation to bring forward a successful Water Act. What's very interesting in terms of looking at sort of what the next citizen engagement will be, because there is a real desire by government to look at doing this again, there seems to be a reluctance at the senior leadership in government to really take part in a true engagement activity. And what I mean by that is that it's not just a consultation where government has kind of figured out what they want to do and they're going out and asking people what they think, but really going out without a preconceived notion of what it could look like. And they're really struggling to come up with those big policy issues, those big service delivery issues, where they feel comfortable enough to go out there and actually hear what people have to say. So that'll be very interesting as that conversation unfolds, and to see the struggle that people are having to let go of that control and increase that comfort in having that open conversation with the public. So to sum up, I was just going to cover off a couple of lessons, I guess, that we've learned along the way in terms of the Canadian service delivery journey. And you've heard a number of these things already today, but visionary leadership is essential. And that leadership certainly takes place at all levels of the organization, but ensuring that you have it at the senior levels, both in the public service and with our politicians, is very important. We need to continue to listen to the voice of the citizen. And when we do this research, we need to ensure that when we're asking people what they think, we actually do something with the information that they give us, and we demonstrate that we are changing the way that we're approaching our delivery of services. We need to measure on an ongoing basis. We can't just go and ask people once and then think that's good enough, because things do change. Things change in terms of citizens' expectation and in terms of our technological abilities to meet those needs. And I think, as I said earlier, that we can benefit from using both quantitative and qualitative approaches to that research. The collaborative service community in Canada certainly is something that has been very helpful for me working in the province of British Columbia, where I have been able to go to my colleagues in other jurisdictions and ask their advice, look at leveraging work that they've already done, and vice versa. The neutral platform that is provided by the Institute for Citizen-Centered Service has been very, very important in terms of sustaining the focus on citizen-centered service delivery and being able to provide that neutral body, that there isn't one jurisdiction that's kind of, sort of stronger than the other in terms of pushing their own agenda. And the other thing, and again, I think we've heard this again and again, that we need to be brave. We need to try new business processes. We need to try new business models. We need to take risks. We need to be comfortable in actually doing things and failing at them so that we can learn from them. And I always refer to the work that we do in citizen-centered service delivery as kind of like missionary work. And I'm very pleased to see that there's such a large turnout in terms of the conference, because I think that there's a lot of people in this room that are probably missionaries in your own jurisdiction as well. So we come to these revival meetings and we get all jazzed up and we think about all this great stuff that we're going to do, and then we go back to our jurisdictions and we try to infect other people, and that we grow our community, and it continues to focus on improving services to citizens. So that's all I have today. I've got the URL there for the Institute for Citizen-Centered Service. Certainly encourage you to have a look at that. There's my email address, and so happy to take any questions that you have by email. If you think of something after you leave, I will be here at the conference till the end of today, and I will be in Canberra on Monday and Melbourne on Wednesday, meeting with some other folks as well. So thank you again for having the opportunity to come here and learn from all of you. And that's it for me. Thank you.
Well, thanks very much, Betty Jo. That was a terrific sort of run-through of a pretty extensive journey that you've been on. I'm sure that we're going to hear from many missionaries now who'd like to quiz you about some of that in a bit more detail. So we do have the roving mics, and I'm just wondering who'd like to go first. Oh, great, over here, in the second row, thank you.
Did you tell them you're getting coffee?
Thank you. My name is Mark McDonald from Transport and Main Roads in Queensland. I like the part where you have start off with the citizens' expectations and then you survey them, find out the gap. We deal in compulsory land acquisition, And the citizens' expectations are that they'll be nailed to the wall. And then after we deal with them, they find out about 70-80% have a good outcome, and we'd be starting to survey